Comedian Rob Schneider makes a bold profession of Jesus in his latest interview with CBN and basically says he came to faith in his room and surrendered his life to God. Let's check him out.
Rob, appreciate you joining me today. A lot to dive into. We're going to talk about Chip Chilla, but I want to talk about culture first because you had a post recently on X, formerly known as Twitter, where you talked about forgiveness and you talked about faith. And I have to tell you, I actually wrote a column about this because I thought it was incredibly moving what you wrote. What sparked that in you to share that message?
A foundation in God. I think Jesus only lets you stray so much. And I think at a certain point, he grabbed me again and hugged me. And I think it's important to the feeling that I had and that foundation for whatever silly movies I've made and for whatever reason people seem to think anything I say is interesting or funny. I guess people call it a platform. I don't know what you call it. I wanted them to, if you are thinking about looking for something in life, a foundation that isn't in sand where it could be blown away. And if you have a family, then if you have that foundation in something beautiful and something like Christianity, I mean, there are other religions out there that say, well, kill your enemy, hate your enemy, and they're infidels. And we have a religion that says love your enemy. Love thy neighbor as thyself. I think that's love others. I mean, what a beautiful way to go through life.
Well, and your message captured that. I mean, your message really captured when you went through each person and the types of people who maybe you were rallying against before during COVID, but you had this sort of reflective tone. It was really powerful seeing you juxtapose those things.
Well, there were people that very angered me. Thank you. When Bruce Springsteen, I didn't name names there. I shouldn't name names now. But when it made me so angry that he would eliminate or not allow and to exclude. And if anything in Christianity, it's welcoming everyone. There's no exclusion. It's not like, well, green-eyed people aren't allowed. So to exclude those people from his Broadway show it seemed to me. And then
hold on. What did Bruce Springsteen do? Bruce Springsteen, did he exclude Christians from something? Bruce Springsteen's canceled shows because of North Carolina's anti-LGBTQ law. Law requires people to use public bathroom based on their biological gender. So because he feels like these people were, the LGBT community was excluded and not treated well, he's then going to exclude an entire state.
Interesting.
Okay, go back to Rob. That's interesting.
Angry, and it made me angry. And then I had to dig underneath, what's that anger? And then I have to know, well, why is he angry? And why am I allowing myself to get angry? And where is the forgiveness there? And you have to know that what it is I can't interpret what other people are feeling. And a lot of what people were feeling was fear. And they're also feeling like they had to get along. And that's pretty common. And so if I am going to lead my life and be an example, as Christ compels us to do, then I have to do it. Even if it hurts, even if it stretches how I used to feel, and and forgiveness. And once you forgive, the beautiful thing about forgiveness isn't the person, it's you. You end up feeling better.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with that other person you're mad at, right? You're releasing yourself from that anger and that frustration and that, resentment. What you mentioned kind of coming back to God, what was your faith journey? What has it been traditionally, and what was it that brought you back around?
Well, I remember being so devoted into Christianity literally as a 16-year-old boy, that I would have dreams of Jesus Christ. And then I did stray like many Christians do stray. And I think, there was a continuing pull back, knowing where I needed to be and to be home. And then very, very strange confluence of things. I married a Catholic, and she was very patient with me. And she's been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And, Catholicism and Christianity is in Europe has declined, but in South America, it is still very strong. And my wife's from Mexico, and there's a real strong faith in Christianity that has not diminished. And I think it's because life is hard there. And I think that there is a necessity for hope and for strength. And with that strength, whether you have less, if you know that you have a foundation in God, and I think you'll be happier. And I think if you take a look at totalitarian countries, and friends of mine, Ilya Baskin, who was from the former Soviet Union, was godless. It was hopeless. There was hopelessness there. That's and this atheistic thing, which is basically pervaded the world, is atheism.
He's spot on. I come from communism, godless Soviet Union communism. And let me tell you, when there's hopelessness, even when people come to another country, the vices, the self-destructive activities go through the roof. The despair, the deaths of despair. goodness, there's so many folks I remember getting into and dying of drunk driving accidents.
Sheesh.
You know, that like, I mean, you escaped communism, you escaped the pogroms of Baku, you escaped all this stuff only to come to America and like drink yourself to death.
Yikes.
You know, it's just sad, but that's what happens when the paradigm and the ideology of somebody is godless. That's the logical conclusions of it.
That's crazy.
You know, things just blew up, and there's just and the universe is things bumping into things and expanding, and that we as human beings are just this freak of accident that happened. That this empathy and compassion and love that we feel is just this accident that happened, and there's no reason for it, and nothing will come of it. And eventually, the universe will just be a series of black holes. And I would just go, well, wait a minute. There's no science behind that, and that is a bleak, horrible way to go through life. I mean, if there is such a thing as love, as compassion, as empathy, it's because you found it in other people.
That's right.
And if it exists in our universe, and as my good friend Norm Macdonald said, my dear friend Norm Macdonald said, it is, we're not a big part of the universe, we're just a fraction of it. So how much more so the rest of the universe? And if it exists, it is endemic to a universe. And then there was something behind all this thing, and that is love, and love is God. And that's the creation of everything. When you take a look at, you know, the flowers and spermatozoas, there's way too much of it that seems to be necessary.
You know, what's interesting about hearing him talk about this and process this, and he's new and he's filtering this stuff, is he's coming. It sounds like he's coming through we've seen a plethora of people come to the faith because evil exists, right? It's obvious. Oh my gosh, it's evil. They're trying to do all this crazy stuff. They're trying to trans the kids. They're trying to do all this crazy stuff. There has to be a God. He almost sounds like he came and he's coming to the faith because he's saying, if goodness is real, if beauty exists, if goodness and beauty exist on an objective standard, there then has to be a God. This is very Jonathan Peugeot. Like, this is very Eastern Orthodox in the way he's talking about this stuff. It's opposite of like, man, the world's coming to an end. You know, there has to be a God because look how bad the world is. He's saying, no. I know that there are these things that are intrinsically wired in us as humans that are unique, goodness, beauty. And if those things are real, then God has to be real because those have to have a source. Let's see.
Flowers to continue. It seems to be there's not a necessity for all the stars in the skies. There seems to be a celebration of existence. And I think what we are is God's, you know, desire for us to experience and find out that we're part of the whole thing. And it's to get to, if you're looking at it from a purely Zen or Buddhist perspective, it's to evolve from a place to where the universe wanted to experience itself and in a higher state of consciousness.
He's losing me a little bit here.
You're losing me a little bit. You know, the CBN guy's like, oh, man.
Why are you got to talk about the universe?
From a Buddhist perspective, what are we talking about?
What are we talking about?
Rocks have consciousness, very low consciousness. We have very high consciousness. And then I think that, you know, for what, you know, for me, the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, we worked on this script. It's been 5 years now about the Shroud of Turin.
Reel it back in. I like it. I like it.
And the last draft that I wrote, which is based on a true story, I didn't write. I was just, you know, when anybody who works in creative arts, there's an antenna. You don't know how it's coming or what it's coming. But I found myself for 9 days just writing this last draft, and it's beautiful. And then when you dig into the Shroud of Turin, which is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ, you realize that it could not have possibly been, as they say, a medieval forgery. And so, then what is this? And they said, well, the people who were doing the calculations for the testing of this, the carbon dating, they did not put into their calculations the French nuns and the devotion of the French nuns, who in the 16th century repaired. Can you imagine the nuns, how, and their devotion, knowing that this was the death cloth that their Savior, that their Lord was wrapped in, how delicately they would work for each strand. And the French nuns did this thing called an invisible weave. And so that when they did the cutting, he's basically saying the shroud, he thinks the Shroud of Turin is authentic as what they used on Jesus because these nuns preserved it and repaired it. And that's why the carbon dating is off, right? Which is really interesting because in the Rogan clip we're going to look at tomorrow, he talks about this with a professor of religious studies.
Yeah, super.
So it's interesting because you could test the cloth and you could find that it's a medieval relic, but then that's not accounting for, I guess, what is it called? Like they had to maintain it and preserve it. Yeah. The age of the shroud is obtained as AD 1260 with at least 95% confidence. 95% confidence. The sampling of the shroud took place in the sacristy at Turin Cathedral at the morning of April. Among those present when the sample was cut. So they haven't tested this since 1988?
That's crazy.
You would think that because technology and all this stuff is advanced, I mean, that's a long time ago. That's almost 40 years.
I remember hearing they carbon dated a World War II plane that they found in the ocean.
Uh-huh.
And it carbon dated like 2 million BC.
No, really? So that's not always accurate?
Yeah.
Well, because there's probably stuff from the ocean that got on it that probably, you know what I mean, merged.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. We see according to the Bible that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask Him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when He answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used from my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.